So good morning everyone to today's webinar. The topic for today's webinar will be how disruptive business models can impact and shape the energy storage market in the future. Before we start off, just a few housekeeping things and rules. You're all on mute. We have a lot of people on the call today and this really helps with the quality of the call. So that said, you can communicate with us using the questions box. This is in the interface panel on the right hand side of your screen. We will address all questions at the end of the webinar, so please be patient. We'll try to get through as many as possible. Any questions we don't manage to answer on the live stream today, we will get back in touch with you afterwards and address those questions. If you have any issues throughout the webinar today, please contact Jan and Emma. You can use our info@delta-ee.com email address if you have any problems with the webinar call today, or alternatively call us on +44 131 625 1011 and they will be able to help you out and try to get you on the webinar stream. And just because we always get a lot of questions on this is the last housekeeping bit. We'll be sending out the slides after the webinar, so you will get all the slides afterwards. Feel free to contact us afterwards if you have any questions unanswered. And we're also recording this webinar today. It will be uploaded on our YouTube channel shortly, and you can share that with your colleagues so that other people can listen in as well. So just briefly, we will keep the webinar to around 40 minutes today. And we'll leave about 10 minutes at the end to answer questions. So we're aware everyone's really busy, so we want to make sure you get the full content. So without further ado, we still have people joining, but we think we should start now. So yes, good morning everyone to today's webinar from the Energy Storage Research Service here at Delta Energy and Environment. My name is Julian Janssen. I'm the manager of the Energy Storage Research Service, and today I'm joined by my colleagues, Vals Grintels, who's an analyst on the Energy Storage Research Service.
Hello everyone.
And we're also joined by Jenny Carson, who looks after demand response here at Delta.
Good morning.
So that's the three of us who you'll be hearing throughout today, but obviously our team, which has had a lot of input into the content for today's webinar and the report which lies behind us, is quite broad. So some of you might know Andy Bradley and John Slow, who are directors at Deltaee. We also have Andrew Turton, principal analyst working on the Energy Storage Research Service, and we work very closely with associates, two in particular, Dave Openshaw and Dan Rassler, who are former UK PN and EPRI respectively. So as you can see, got quite an experienced and broad team trying to bring a lot of different angles to the topic. So that said, we'll kick off with today's agenda. Just to briefly talk you through it, I said earlier we'll try to keep it to around 40 minutes. We'll start off with a brief introduction. Then we will show you how we carried out our business model analysis. So we had a lot of complex modeling behind it, so we'll give you a quick overview of that. We'll then share selected findings, and I'm sure that's what you've all come on the webinar for today, on 3 particular business models. Get some perspectives from the wider flexibility space, and then this leaves us with some final messages and conclusions, and then hopefully around 10 minutes to answer your questions at the end of the webinar. So to kick off, well, the first question we would like to address is why are we doing this webinar? And really, you know, last week I was at the Energy Storage Global Conference in Brussels, and one of the main topics that was discussed was regulation. And obviously this is really an important topic, especially for the larger grid-scale energy storage market. But I think the debate is to an extent in danger of missing a point, and that's that the market is moving a lot faster already. And waiting for regulation to catch up is quite a risky game. And what we see is that industry is moving forward today, and it's important to see what can be done today and what others are doing. So really, it's these new business models that are already shaping the energy storage market that we'll be looking into in more detail. And what we can see is that this is really in the mainstream already. A lot of stories around storage being integrated into virtual power plants, looking at frequency regulation, and a lot of different business models coming into the mainstream market space, or at least in the media space. But what we can also find is that the sales performance of energy storage has been relatively limited so far. So while we are very optimistic, we are still a bit cautious. And this is why we did our latest report, which is available to subscribers of the Energy Storage Research Service. And this is really to look at 3 representative business models for energy storage. We contrast these different business models to see how we can provide a stronger value propositions for vendors and the end customer as well. So before we get into the core findings, I will actually give you the headlines straight away. So, you know, if you're really busy, head off. But no, I'm only joking. Stay on the webinar and see how we got to our conclusions. But really the key messages are of the 3 business models we looked into a lot of detail. Those 3 models were shared benefit models, which basically means behind the meter systems are aggregated and additional revenue is shared with the customer. We see them currently entering the market, especially driven by soft factors in countries like Germany, but we also see the proposition will improve greatly by 2020. So these will really be core going forward. Second business model we looked at is a type of no upfront cost solution or leasing type of solutions. This is particularly attractive in the commercial market over in the States, especially in California, and this is attractive today and it will stay so in the future. The last model we looked at is type of community virtual storage solutions, and really we think at the moment they're not economically viable, and that's primarily due to regulation. So what do we think is going to be the business model most driving the market? We see the shared benefit model, at least in the short term, in Europe. So this is what we are limiting ourselves to here, really driving the market and being a significant proposition. While the second will be much bigger over in the United States, for example, and we'll see some niche applications emerging, while the third one really we think will remain more of a trial project space. So throughout the webinar we'll present the results that led to these conclusions, so please listen to the entire webinar. And first, for those of you who don't know us, we would like to introduce Deltaee Energy and Environment in a little bit more detail.
So we are based in Edinburgh, that's where we're coming from today, but with colleagues out in Belgium and near London and in the Netherlands. And what we focus on really, our core expertise is the customer end of the value chain. And it's our mission at Deltaee Energy and Environment to really help our clients navigate the transformation of this energy space. So as we all know, that's becoming increasingly pertinent, and the speed of that is really increasing. And so we really see this as becoming much more distributed, customer-centric, and service-orientated. And so we help our clients with a variety of different ways, but two key offerings that we kind of the way that we deliver this is either through bespoke consultancy or research subscription services. So yeah, you can see here that energy storage is one of our subscription services, and it's right at the heart of what we do. It taps into the generation side and other research services that we do in this space, also customers and networks. So that's where we're coming from today. I'll let Julian fill you in on more of the energy storage itself.
Yes, thank you very much, Jenny. And I think, yeah, hopefully that summarizes it quite concisely for you. I know we have a lot of subscribers on the call anyway, so apologies for those of you who do know us, but maybe to give you a bit more of an overview of what the Energy Storage Research Service does. It really helps our clients understand how energy storage is being deployed today and in the future, where the growth opportunities lie, what business models are emerging into the market, the key applications, and understanding how to create good customer propositions in this very dynamic and, you know, at times quite difficult to get through market space. So that's the Energy Storage Research Service. A little bit more on this at the end, but we know you're impatiently waiting to get into the content of the webinar, so we'll kick that off now. And yes, any questions on the energy storage research service, we're more than happy to address these at the end of the webinar or in a one-to-one phone call with any of you.
Thanks, Julian. Yes, so first thing is as part of our energy storage research service, we have compiled an extensive library of detailed case studies, all of which are available to our subscribers. And these case studies profile innovative deployment cases as well as business models in the energy storage market space. And on this slide you can see the extract of our case study library, and this really forms the backbone of the analysis that we conducted in our recent business model report and also used for the information presented in today's webinar. And as you can see on this slide, based on the analysis from our case study library, we have synthesized 4 overriding groupings of business models, focusing especially on how energy storage propositions can create value for the energy system and for end customers. First of which is single-use case grouping, where we have 2 values. First is customer value, the other one is energy system value. And while these are very different, both of them focus on one type of value, so that's why we've put them under one grouping. The 3 business model groupings that we've chosen for the business model report were storage for free, shared benefit and revenue, as well as community storage. And we decided to take a deep dive into these 3 specific business models, focusing on STEM for storage for free, Fenecon for shared benefit revenue, and MVV for community storage. And it is important to say that we use these 3 companies only as proxies for our analysis. So how did we do this? We did a detailed evaluation of business models. We quantified a variety of input parameters, as you can see on this slide. Quite a lot of data used to do our analysis, and we also quantified key financial outputs regarding the performance and feasibility of the business model. So generated cash flow, year-by-year cash flow outputs, as well as determined the IRR and PV and payback periods for individual stakeholders in different business models.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that, Valt. I think that gave you a good overview. But before we get into the report, we'd like to get your opinion. So I'm going to launch a poll now. That should be on your screen now. We'd be really appreciative if you would vote. So the question really is, how disruptive will energy storage be for customer-focused business model in the energy space over the next 5 years? We've got a few choices for you. One will be, is the impact going to be not disruptive at all? So, energy storage is pretty much smoke without fire, especially in the end customer-focused segment. Second option for you today is, will it have a minor disruptive impact? So, energy storage will be part of the ecosystem alongside other technologies, and they are changing the way customers use and generate power, but, it's not by itself going to have a disruptive impact. Then, do you think it will have a major disruptive impact? Will energy storage be a technology that will be really shaping the distributed energy landscape, really change customer offerings, or is energy storage really going to be the game changer? So it will transform the energy system for customers, the way customers use electricity, the way customers generate electricity, and energy storage really is at the heart of driving the transformation of the energy system.
So it looks like we've got about 65% of you voted. There seems to be one clear option that people have gone for. So make sure you get your votes in so that we can see what everyone thinks. So.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think it's quite a close race between 2 options here. We've got most of you have voted now. If you haven't cast your vote, please do so now, because we will be closing the poll shortly. So if you haven't voted, please vote now. We will finish the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we will close the poll now. So let's have a look at the results of the poll today. This should be up on your screen now. So as you can see here, quite close between minor disruptive impact or major disruptive impact. No one really thinks it's going to have no impact at all, so that's great to hear. So we're on the right track, but not many of you either think it's a game changer. So really it's quite a split between the two, but most of you thinks the impact will be major. So let's find out what the analysis we did in the business model report gives us on this and whether we agree or disagree with your view. So to get into the first business model we looked into more detail, this is Phenecon. It's the Phenecon Energy Pool. And to give you a bit of background, Phenecon is a German company. They were founded in 2011 and they specialize in the development and planning of PV, LED, e-mobility and intelligent energy storage systems. They also act as a distributor for BYD, so one of the largest battery manufacturers in the world is a close partner for Phenecon. And really at the heart of their proposition of the Phenecon Energy Pool is that they couple the systems with an energy manager provided by Ampart, and through this they can aggregate residential and commercial behind-the-meter systems, and through that aggregated capacity play into flexibility markets, primarily primary control reserve in Switzerland and Germany, and also into electricity trading markets. Under the current business model, Phenecon and the partners can earn revenue from providing primary control reserve and doing intelligent trading, and they actually share some of that benefit with the customer, hence the shared benefit notion of this business model that we came up with. So the customer here receives 1,000 kilowatt hours of electricity per year, free of charge, and they might also earn future revenues from ancillary services if they emerge and if Phenecon decide to share that with the customer. Primarily the offering is targeted at green-minded customers who have high electricity demand, for example having a heat pump or an electric vehicle. And in future, Phenecon may also offer this type of package as a solution in the market. And to just give you a bit of an overview, so this is a very simplified diagram. We've taken out all the text because otherwise it wouldn't fit on the slide for this webinar. But as you can see, there's three core stakeholders, Phenecon, Ampart, and Strom, who are the electricity supplier as part of this model. And costs and revenues are shared between different parties. And really, it's quite important to see this diagram exists in a more detailed form. So if you would like to see this or would like to discuss it, please get in touch after the webinar. We're happy to talk you through it in more detail. So as Wout said earlier, we used the different business models, namely STEM, Phenecon and MVDStromberg, more as proxies to understand what is the overall potential for this benefit or this type of grouping. So on the shared benefit revenue model, there's lots of different varieties out there in the market, but what we still see is that the financial gain is limited, especially for the end customer. So we see a payback of still above 10 years for residential storage solution with this additional revenue, with this additional shared benefit. It highly depends on the individual solution, on the sizing of the PV and the storage system, on the annual consumption. So it's very variable, but kind of in general, that's what we see. We also see quite a lot of risk that kind of has hindered the model emerge so far. It's the risk of energy prices taken by the provider, but also the need to have quite a large pool of assets. So only with market penetration of behind-the-meter storage can these models really work in Europe. And this also leads us nicely to the ancillary services market. So taking primary control in Germany, it's a very difficult, long pre-qualification process. So accessing this market is difficult in the first place, and then also the value of it today and in the future is quite uncertain. Nonetheless, we think this type of business model is probably the one that in the short term in Europe will be most scalable and replicable across different countries. Overall, we think that 50 to 60% of the installed base of residential storage systems in 2020 will have some form of additional benefit for the customer. So it's going to be quite a big model, and it will only increase in importance, especially as flexibility values become easier to access and become more significant. And this is also shown by how many types of players are already active in this market. So, I mean, just take three very recent examples. Sonnen last month announced the launch of the Sonnen Flat, so this actually goes a step further and customers get all their electricity that they don't produce themselves for free. Last week we had Eneco announce that they'll be working with Ampart in the Netherlands for a similar offering where the customer receives some shared benefit. And even yesterday, Moixa in the UK announced a new offering where PV plus storage is coupled and some extra value is shared with the customer. So lastly, the question I'd like to kind of finish on is, one of the key questions is, how do we get this into the mass market? At the moment there's thousands of assets doing this already, but the economic proposition still needs to get stronger, and it's also crucial from an energy supply point of view to develop dynamic tariffs to give customers confidence and believe that these models work in the long term.
Great. Yes. So second business model we dived into is STEM, and just a bit of background. STEM is a startup based in the US that focuses its main proposition around an intelligent integrated energy storage solution for commercial customers, and it provides its primary value through well-established software that maximizes the benefit from the operation of these batteries. And STEM has developed a value proposition which is very similar to a subscription-like deal for the commercial energy storage, where customer doesn't have to worry about upfront cost barrier. And STEM primarily aims to provide the reduction of peak demand, which is a source of very high energy use charges for commercial customers in the US. And really the reductions of peak demand come from the well-established software, which is at the center of this business model. And additionally, demand response and flexibility payments from network operators, which are generated by STEM aggregating storage capacity from its customer base, can be shared with the customers to sweeten the deal even further. And the idea is that STEM aims to, while keeping leasing fee low enough to generate instant savings to end customer, also aims to subsidize the cost of the product throughout the lifetime of the system, thus allowing this kind of business model to work. And as you can see on the slide, again, we have a very simplified flowchart that shows value flows in this business model, and the key stakeholder here is STEM. But if you're interested in more detail, again, just contact us and we're happy to talk about this. So when it comes to the storage for free business model, the key thing for this is that it directly benefits the end customer from day one, so they generate savings from day one. However, the main risk with this business model is the fact that it heavily relies on energy cost structure as well as additional revenue sources. And if specific energy cost structure is available, as well as additional revenue from the demand response and flexibility, the payback time for this business model can go down to 7 years, which is really good for a business model currently, energy storage business model. And we see significant growth in the US for this kind of business model, especially in states like California and Hawaii, and additionally some other states that might be emerging in the future. However, it will remain niche in Europe in the short term because we don't see the energy cost structure as well as additional revenue sources matching what is happening in the US at the moment. And as you can see here, there are quite a few companies offering storage for free type of business model, STEM, Green Charge Networks, and Green Mountain Power being based in the US. There are also Entega and Energy from Europe, and they focus mainly on residential offering, and they offer renting and leasing propositions for PV plus storage, but we don't see this driving the market just now.
So the third model that we looked into in more detail is a type of community or virtual storage, as some people like to call it. And the MVDStromberg is a model that we've looked at as part of the storage service in detail. We've looked at as part of our energy services innovation study, which has been really monitoring how the market is changing across Europe in that type of segment. And to give you a bit of background, MVDStromberg is actually one of the largest energy suppliers in Germany. Specifically, they're the 7th biggest electricity supplier. And they're really trying to change their traditional energy business, expanding into renewable energy, customer-focused innovation, combined heat power, etc. And the basic principle of the Strombank, and personally I quite like this idea, is to create a current account for electricity for the customer. So what this asset tries to do, it's located on the distribution grid, and what it tries to do is it's reduce the impact of distributed generation on the local network, but it also creates additional value through the joint use of this storage asset with both residential, commercial, end customers, and for trading and energy balancing markets. So in short, the system manages the energy flow of the customer, and they can, in a sense, deposit and withdraw stored electricity in this individual account. Over the trial, which has come to an end, and I believe they are currently doing the final evaluation report, the overall trial set out to evaluate the technical feasibility, the regulatory framework, and the economic viability for a future product. And really what we found is that in principle, the Strombank successfully stacked the energy system and customer values, but there's a key issue because in practice, regulation around use of public grid infrastructure and the subsequent charges incurred mean it's not economically feasible, at least within this kind of space. And as you see, they work with a lot of different parties. It was a research trial, and really that's where we see these type of propositions being for now. Because for the customer it makes sense. They really engage with the energy generation and consumption. They benefit directly from this model. However, there's still a big risk around regulation, and that's why we don't really see any commercial implementation in the short term. And it's not economically viable right now. So yeah, as I said, we'll see unlikely to see further rollout outside trial projects, and there's actually a few trial projects who are trying to do slightly different propositions, but going down a similar route. One example of this is the Energy Neighbor in the south of Germany, and actually I learned last week that the Nice Grid project in the south of France will, in its next phase, look to evaluate this type of virtual community storage as part of the proposition. So it is something that occupies people's mind, especially from a network operating point of view. But as we said before, this is really where maybe the regulatory debate does make sense, and a lot needs to change to bring this into a bigger market.
Thanks, Julian and Val. So you've heard about lots of different ways that business models are shaping storage. But in terms of the wider flexibility space, today we see that mainly being characterized by the aggregators. So these players have created the market as we know it today, primarily through engaging with the commercial and industrial customers and maximizing and kind of capitalizing upon the fact that they have large asset bases of load. So we're talking about megawatts here, and really cherry picking a select customer base and able to minimize transaction costs. But now we see emerging flexibility kind of coming through, and this is really where storage is beginning to surface and play a role. Again, though, it's the big players who are currently most active in this space. So, for example, your EDF or E.ON, as we saw coming through and winning some of the EFR tender bids. So we can see established players that are already active in the energy space moving in to explore new sources of value from flexibility. And the second emerging type that we see is from large buildings. So here there's lots of flexibility to be had, there's lots of demand, and we're seeing lots of companies come through with novel, innovative ways of actively managing this, so able to manipulate and kind of respond to that flexibility. But going on into the future, we see a much more distributed landscape. So again, that stepwise increase of the customer base, moving from your cherry-picked customers through to a much more wider landscape, which is interacting with much more many more players. So this is summarizing kind of the different pros and cons of what we've just said. But really the key message is that we see these emerging and future types of flexibility that move into a wider customer base as the most exciting areas, and there's lots and lots of untapped potential here. So we're monitoring different companies that are coming through and really trying to shape and create and expand upon the marketplace. And this gives you an idea, a sort of a start, a flavour for some of the companies that are in this space. And there's no doubt that there's many, many more, and some that we will be surprised that come through. But you can see that, again, not only are there many players, they're coming from a big, wide range of backgrounds. So you've got your startups, for example, VCharge in the UK or Jules Energy in the Netherlands. But you've also got suppliers coming through. You've got manufacturers, telcos from outside the energy space becoming interested, and software companies and DNOs. So a really big range who are really creating this battleground that's very active. And so you've got lots of different approaches as well as players. So for example, partnerships in the value chain. So we're seeing examples such as Sonnen, who are in the storage space in Germany, partnering with Tico. And again, so they're coming from the telcos background. Or you've got bundling approaches. An example there would be Lichtblich, and so they're coming from the supplier side of the value chain, and bundling in and starting to use swarm technology to explore demand response. And then another really interesting approach is from manufacturers and different players looking to embed this capability within the products that they're producing. So upfront, considering how to wire this into their hardware, and that's really pretty exciting if you're kind of considering that the knock-on effect might be that customers begin to expect this capability, and really potentially normalize as a proposition, which is a far cry from where we are now. So unsurprisingly, I'm sure you'll not be surprised to hear that we're excited about this space and looking into this, and we're launching a new big study actually, which will focus on demand response and flexibility and the different value streams. So this slide sort of summarizes lots of the key questions that our clients have been asking us, and really it's key to kind of highlight here that we'll be bringing in Deltaee's key expertise with regards to customer insight and speaking to people, and actually hearing what works, what they like. So yeah, if you feel free to get in touch and help us shape this, because we're really just kicking it off now. So we'd love to hear from you.
Great, thanks Jenny on that perspective. Yeah, as you can see, taking a step back is sometimes quite a good thing to do, and looking outside of the storage narrative and see what's happening. And I think what we can see is that the two are both converging, but also maybe to an extent competing. So where does this all leave us? And we've decided to take this graph from our report, which on a high level shows you the results of our modeling. And we've modeled 4 different business models here actually. The 3 we've just presented, and we've also used the proxy modeling, looking at how would a storage for free type of model look in Germany under the current conditions in the market. So to summarize it, community storage we really think is currently not viable under the current regulatory regime. It will be more within the niche space, trial projects driven potentially mainly by DSOs. Looking at a storage for free model in Germany, we believe the paybacks will remain poor even out to 2020, unless magically the German energy policy space transforms significantly, and the value of flexibility will become very easy to access and very valuable. Shared benefits model, we mentioned it earlier. Actually, we see this really driving the market, both in Germany but also in countries like the UK. There's lots happening here, both in the residential space, but we see something coming into the C&I space as well. Well, lastly, the storage for free, the STEM type proposition, this is very attractive already in California. It's attractive today. It will be even more attractive in the future. And from Europe, sometimes you can look over there a bit envious and see how the market is developing. So that's the kind of high-level results, summarizing everything we talked about in the webinar today. There's one last thing we'd like to leave you with, and that's what we call the 7 success factors of new energy storage business models. And they've come out of, basically the research we've done over the past year and a half on different business models, on storage, but also wider energy services, flexibility, and these are our standout factors. So really it's about already accessing values from flexibility, power trading, not waiting for regulation to change, but doing this today.
Secondly, it's about being more than just an energy storage provider.
It's also around building a strong marketing message for behind-the-meter applications, because this is where customers need to be convinced more so than, I guess, in the grid-scale market.
And it's also about building effective partnerships with other players along the energy system value chain. For example, energy suppliers.
Is also, I think what we showed today is a lot of companies are daring to trial. You know, not everyone will be successful. The market will converge at one point. We will probably see some consolidation, but actually don't wait until storage costs come down. You know, the market is here today. Implement innovation, learn from it, and be ahead of your competition.
Also, one of the key things that we've realized after doing more in-depth research in these business models is that putting smart software and data at the heart of the business model is the key to a successful business model.
And lastly, you know, unsurprisingly, you still need to have the financial backing, be able to invest and achieve scale more quickly, because it will help improve better propositions. So that's our last few success factors we want to leave you with. So as you can see, the very detailed report we've got in the background of this both combines very quantitative analysis around IRR, payback periods, net present value, but also some of the nice qualitative factors that have come out of it. If you would like to discuss any of this with us, if you would like to find out more, please get in touch with us. We've just been, you know, taken just about 35 minutes, so we're well in time. This is just an overview of what the energy storage service provides. And we'll now have about 10 minutes to answer your questions. So we'll get the questions up for us now. Please be patient with us, because there's a lot of questions out there, and we will try to answer as many as we can right now. But if there's any questions we haven't answered, we'll get in touch with you afterwards. So let's start out. Okay, so there's one interesting question: which business models will be most impacted by the electricity settlement reform? And obviously this refers specifically to the UK market. And I think, you know, on a wider scale, the importance of half-hourly settlements, of the smart meter rollout is not to underestimate. But I think a lot of the work here needs to be done by the energy companies. They need to introduce dynamic tariffs. This needs to be reflected in what customers see. I think on the residential side, this is probably where most work is still to be done. The shared benefit model is where this would likely make the most sense. We also have some questions around the background calculations. So maybe just I think we've got a question here. Vals, what are the assumptions for the storage for free business model in Germany? Because we just presented that right at the end.
So the assumptions for storage for free business model in Germany are that basically main value comes from not cutting peak demands, but actually just self-consumption from the on-site PV. So we're assuming that the commercial customer has a PV system on-site, and the battery storage system provides improved self-consumption. Because, and there's another question that asks about what isn't allowing the STEM business model to work in Europe as it works in US, and the main reason is the fact that there are no demand, or the demand charges aren't as high in Europe as they are in the US. And again, in the US, it is around 70% of your bill for commercial customer is demand charge, which is basically charge that is taken from the highest 15-minute average usage recorded on the demand meter, and it's around $8 per kilowatt peak. Well, there's not so high value in Europe for this.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that, Vals. We've got more questions coming in, one specifically on the flexibility side. So what barriers do we see to the wider rollout of demand response, especially in the residential space currently?
Yeah, well, so I think, it's probably fair to say we've been fairly optimistic here and kind of highlighted some of the exciting things that have been happening. But yeah, so for the barriers, I think you've probably got three key issues that Julian kind of touched upon as well when he was talking about the smart meter rollout. So the barriers being the fact that smart meter rollout, the fact that we the controls that are linked with that and the communications, that's not happening as quickly as perhaps was expected, or also would really be helpful to move forward the ability to use flexibility, and especially, as Julian said, in the residential space. Secondly, and integrally linked, is cost reflectivity. So basically having the ability to respond to price signals, that's absolutely essential to be able to to tap into the flexibility revenue streams. And thirdly, the half-hourly settlement. So we really need that visibility and that transparency to be able to do that. So they would be the three key barriers. But it's amazing to see all the different companies that are coming through and trying to address these different barriers in different ways.
Yeah, we've got more questions coming. Please, yes, submit your questions. Please do so, and we will answer them. If we can't answer them today in the live cast, we'll answer them afterwards. Now, I had a very interesting question coming in right now around the value of ancillary services, especially in Germany, as there's a lot of parties aggregating residential batteries, but also larger players moving into this market. So this is a very valid question, and it's something we see happening actually, and it's quite difficult to predict. But let's take primary control reserve in Germany. I mean, this is something a lot of people are talking about. But overall, this market, it's around 600 to 700 megawatts. So it's not a huge market, and we see a lot of battery players, both on the grid scale and on the residential scale, trying to vie for this market. And the question is, will the prices of the market, or of will the prices for primary control reserve be dropping as more players bid in? Yes, I mean, this is simple economics. It's supply and demand. We had guys like Steag. They've already got 3 of their big projects online. Overall, this will be 90 megawatts. So, you can do the maths. This is almost a tenth of the overall capacity of the PCR market. And they're not the only player looking to do so. So, yes, we do believe that the prices for primary control reserve in Germany will probably fall. And, some projects that have been realized already or are in the process of being realized might suddenly become a lot less economical going forward. So, we have another question here on the opportunity for commercial and industrial in Europe, because we touched upon the STEM model. And obviously, one of the questions is, why is this not working over here? I mean, overall, I think this is a very hot topic right now, and the C&I opportunity is something we see especially emerging potentially in the UK first in Europe, because here the value for flexibility service is much higher, it's much easier to access, and actually we see this probably being the first market where we'll see some movement in this, and this is also confirmed by a few of the demand response aggregators moving into the storage space right now. And interestingly, this is going to be the next topic for our Energy Storage Research Service in-depth reports. So if you'd like to exchange views on that, if you've got questions on that, get in touch, because yeah, it's all about what is the opportunity in that segment in Europe. I think the questions are tailing off a little bit. We'll see if we can answer 1 or 2 more. We're all aware you're busy. You want to maybe get away. If you have a pressing question, please send that in as well. So let's try go through some of these questions. Yeah, this one's interesting. So what is our view? So someone's asking, what is our view on P2P trading and what impact that could have?
Okay, yeah, so P2P, your peer-to-peer trading platforms. We've heard a lot of people talking about this and kind of discussing potentially the potential impact that can have, the wider implications on the market, because it's effectively creating transactions and creating a new marketplace that didn't exist, doesn't exist. So we've seen I've seen examples in the UK. We've got Open Utility and their Picklo, previously trialed with Good Energy, but now coming through and actually becoming moving on from the trial period. We've also got examples in the Netherlands with Jules Energy, so yeah, so different ideas coming through with this peer-to-peer interactions. And if you're kind of thinking about how that can involve the flexibility and the storage space, it's interesting because you'd assume it could potentially be a natural extension, because these peer-to-peer platforms and trading platforms are effectively linking, for example, renewable generation. So say you've got a wind farm in Cornwall that the Eden project want to procure their energy from, then this actually facilitates that transaction. So linking on flexibility and storage, it will be interesting to see kind of if and when that comes through.
Okay, thanks for that answer, Jenny. We still have questions coming through, but we're nearing the end of today's webinar, and really sorry if we couldn't answer your question. I think we answered the majority of the ones that came through, but if we haven't answered your questions, drop us an email, or we'll try reach out to you directly. Maybe to leave you with one last just a bit of information, and we'll be finishing the webinar shortly. We've taken pretty much exactly 45 minutes, so very well timed. So hopefully we haven't taken too much of your time. If you want the slides of the webinar, please email us. You've got my email address up there. You can email the info@Deltaee email, and we'll try to get through all the requests as quickly as we can. So be patient. You'll either get them by the end of this week or early next week. If you have any outstanding questions we haven't answered, give us a call. You've got the numbers there as well. And obviously, if you would like to find out more about the Energy Storage Research Service, how to subscribe, how to get all the background information, all the assumptions, the detailed Excel spreadsheets behind this business model analysis, give us a call, drop us an email. We're more than happy to answer any questions on this. Visit our website as well. And as previously said, we will upload today's webinar recording onto YouTube. We can share that as well with you and your colleagues. So yes, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We really enjoyed the webinar today. I hope you enjoyed it too. And we're looking forward to speaking to most of you afterwards, and get your feedback, get your views, and try to get a great overview. So thank you very much for joining today. Have a good day, and hopefully see you on one of our webinars soon.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.